What's going on, everybody? Lil Chris here, and I've got something new to share with you all. This is an APA 8 ball league match of one of my fellow pool players that is not on my team. His name is Mikey, and he's a skill level 4. Now, he provided me this video because he's well aware that I record matches of my team members, review them, and offer coaching advice in order to help improve their game. And he's also well aware that I wanted to start publishing videos like this on my YouTube channel, so he offered himself up to be the very first one. So what I hope to do for him is go through his match here and point out other options that I think that he could have done versus what he actually did do, as well as try to point out any bad habits that I think he might have and that he can work on. Now keep in mind, as far as offering advice, one of the hardest things to do is offer advice based on their skill level. It would be bad of me to try to offer advice on what I would do when he's probably not capable of controlling the cue ball like I can do as a skill level 7, with him being a skill level 4. Now, also keep in mind that these are my opinions, and I'm pretty sure there'll be other options that he could have done. So feel free to comment in the comment section below with the timestamp of the shot and the option that you think that he could have done as well. So let's begin. Okay, Mikey. Now, as I understand it, you are up against a skill level 4, and in APA, when two skill level 4s play against one another, this is going to be a race to 3. And out of the respect for the privacy of your opponent, I've edited them completely out of the video. So we're only going to focus on when you shoot. And one of the first things I noticed right off the bat was during your lag. You have a bad habit that I've seen most beginning pool players have when they shoot, and that's you pick up your cue when you shoot. Now, the reason why I consider this to be a bad habit is if I were to ask you, when exactly are you picking up your cue? Are you doing that before you contact the cue ball, during contacting the cue ball, or after contacting the cue ball? Because if you're picking up your cue after you contact the cue ball, there's not really that big of an issue. I don't expect anything bad to happen with the cue ball. I just consider it to be bad form. But if you're doing it during the contacting of the cue ball, then you might accidentally miscue, especially if the tip of the cue is not properly chalked. And if you're doing it before you contact the cue ball, then you might accidentally hit the cue ball in an area that you were not planning on doing. In other words, if you wanted to hit the cue ball directly in the center and you're picking up your cue before you contact the cue ball, then chances are you're probably going to invoke some topspin on the cue ball, which is probably not what you were planning on doing. So try to be mindful of that when you're performing the lag or during any part of the game, whether it's the break shot or when you are shooting. Because I did happen to notice that there are going to be some shots that come up where you do pick up your cue sometime during your shot. And on other shots, you were just fine. You stayed down, you finished the shot, then you stood up and observed the results of whatever it was you were trying to do. And that's the consistency that we want to have all throughout the game, during the lag, during the break, and while we're shooting. So let's try to work on that. Now you did win the lag, so here we are with your first break. And it looks like you're going to do a head-on break. And I happen to notice that you have another bad habit here, so let's watch what you do. And that's you stand up during your break, which means your cue is being picked up during your break, which has the same exact problem of you picking up your cue during your lag. And that's when are you moving, before, during, or after contacting the cue ball. So I'm certainly going to suggest that you stay down during the break, just like you do when you're performing a normal shot. And try not to choose power over control. We've all should have heard that the break shot is the most important shot of the game. It determines whether or not if you're going to break and run the table or not make a ball on the break and your opponent runs the table on you. So stay down and rely more on control and try to control the cue ball to be in the center of the table after the break, as well as try to be able to pocket a ball. And here's where I'm going to suggest that you might want to watch my Breaking an 8-ball rack 2 ways video, where I show you how to perform what I call the classic break and how to make the 8-ball on the break. Now you didn't make a ball on the break and your opponent claimed solids, making you stripes, and this was your first opportunity at the table. Now, one thing I happened to notice during the course of your match is that the vast majority of all of your shots, you hit the cue ball directly in the center. So that's where my coaching advice is going to come from. I'm not going to advise that you use any top spin or bottom spin, left spin or right spin if you don't know how to use them. So using a center ball hit, I'm going to try to help you predict where the cue ball is going to go and know what your next possible shot is going to be. But the first thing that we're going to start off with is something that I tell all of my team members, and I think this also applies to any player at any skill level. And that's before you hone in on the first ball that you're going to shoot at, you need to know where all of the balls of your set are on the table and try to identify which ones are the hardest ones for you to deal with. Because those are the ones that you want to deal with as soon as possible and not leave them towards the end of your run out if you're able to do so. Because you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you have one or two balls left on the table while your opponent still has all of theirs, or at least more than you. Because either on accident or on purpose, they can use their remaining balls to play defensive and then slowly but surely pick apart the rack until they're able to win the rack. Now, having said that, I think it's the 12 ball that's the hardest ball on the table. With it being so close to the side rail and so close to that side pocket, there's no real good chance to make the 12 ball into the lower left corner pocket unless we're able to get straight on the 12 ball on this side here. Because any potential angle that we have on the 12 ball on this side leaves the possibility of scratching in the side pocket. So I think if we want to safely make the 12 ball, it's probably best if we can get the cue ball somewhere on this side so we can shoot the 12 ball into the upper left corner pocket. The only problem is that since you're going to be using a direct center cue ball hit, I don't see a very good route that we can take that'll allow us to get the cue ball on this side of the 12 ball. So let's see as the rack progresses what we might be able to do with the 12 ball, unless of course the 12 ball is moved during the course of the game. Now before we decide what your opening shot is going to be, let's keep in mind that depending upon the camera angle, which I think this is the best camera angle you can record a match on, but not every shot is going to be as good as it appears to be. In other words, I cannot really tell if you're able to shoot the 9 ball into the corner pocket because it's hard to tell how much of the 7 ball might actually be in your way. Another thing to keep in mind is that since you're a skill level 4, I'm not always going to give you a run out to the 8 ball. It's of my opinion that skill level 4s tend to average about 2 to 3 balls before they miss and give the table to their opponent. Now having said that, let's see what your opening shot is going to be, and let's see if I agree with it. So it looks like you're studying the table a little bit. Have you identified the 12 ball to be the hardest ball on the table? And it looks like you're going to go for the 15 ball in the upper right corner pocket. And it looks like you overcut the ball. And then because of all of that, were you aware that this is where the cue ball was actually going to end up? So let's backtrack a little bit. So about right here, I think that the 10 ball is actually a better ball. The reason being is that if you shoot the 10 ball into this corner pocket here, the cue ball should roll over here and hit the bottom rail and then come back up, all depending upon how hard or how soft you hit the ball. And my predictions are going to come from hitting the cue ball rather softly, somewhere between your lag or a little bit softer. Because you have to keep in mind that since you're on a 3.5 by 7 foot table, there's hardly ever a reason for the cue ball to travel a great distance going from one ball to the next. Unless, of course, you're aware that if you're going to shoot a ball at one end of the table and you need to get the cue ball down to the other end of the table, all depending upon how thick or thin the hit on the first ball needs to be. Now, the reason why I'm suggesting that shooting the 10 ball is better is because when we run into the 14 ball, then that's where our predictions get a little cloudy. We're not exactly sure what's going to happen. But when we shoot the 10 ball, we can at least have some assumption that we're not going to run into anything. And if we're correct with our prediction, that allows us to shoot the 13 ball next into this corner pocket. And then since we know the cue ball will be rolling forward by the time the cue ball hits the 13 ball, the cue ball may end up somewhere right around here, and then you can shoot the 15 or the 9 ball next. And so that's why I think the 10 ball is a better shot to choose at this point rather than shooting the 15 ball. So after missing the 15 ball, your opponent was able to make a couple of more solids before giving the table back to you. But now it looks like your situation is a little bit worse now that you have this clutter over here. It doesn't look like the 9-11 combination is on unless the cue ball is where the 15 ball is at, and you still have this 12 ball that I mentioned earlier. But given the lay of the table, it looks like we can deal with the 12 ball. First, we start off by trying to take out the 10 ball into the lower right corner pocket. The natural roll of the cue ball should allow it to bounce off this bottom rail and head towards the 12 ball. And as long as you can land somewhere right around here, that allows you to play the 12 ball in the upper left hand corner, like I'd mentioned before. But let's see what you decide to do. Okay, it looks like you're going to do something with the clutter. Now that was creative. Caroming the 15 ball off of the 14 ball to go into the corner pocket. Now, were you aware that that's where your cue ball was going to end up? And then what are you going to do next? Because it looks like you're coming down for the 13 or the 10, and you went for the 10, but look how the cue ball almost sets up for the 12 ball. So that's what I was talking about earlier. If we would have started with the 10 ball first, we could have potentially made the 10 and then shoot the 12 ball in the upper left-hand corner pocket, then try to deal with that clutter. But even so, since you made a ball and you still had a shot on that 10 ball, you still have the same exact order. It's just that we got a ball out before we tried to make the 10 ball. So both of them are about equal. I just think that the 10 ball was easier to make from the starting position than from shooting it up at the top rail that you had there. So because of where you left the cue ball on your last shot, your opponent wasn't able to do anything and gives the table back to you with this layout, which I currently don't see a direct shot for you. All I see is a possible bank shot on the 10 ball into the cross corner pocket with the potential of improving the position of the 12 ball, no longer making it a trouble ball. I don't see anything you can do with the 13 ball or the 14 ball. You do have a 9-11 combination. You just can't do it right now with the 3 ball being in the way, which is why I think banking the 10 ball is the best shot you can do here. Because you can either improve the position of the 12 ball, and you might not have a shot at it, but you should have a shot at the 9-11 combination, or you can miss the 12 ball, and you would still have the 9-11 combination afterwards. Let's see what you decide to do. So it looks like you're going to try something with the 14 ball. Do you think that it goes? So now what we've done here is that we've replaced the 9-11 combination with a 9-14 combination. But it does look like the 11 ball goes into the upper left-hand corner pocket, and that allows us to maybe break out the 9 and the 14. I just wouldn't suggest changing the position of balls that can actually go when you have other opportunities that you can do. So here, I think banking the 10 ball was probably the best shot you could have done. Now your opponent misses their next shot, and like before, you have no direct shot to any ball towards a pocket. You are able to hit the 13 ball, which means you're automatically going to hit the 10 ball, and who knows where it might go after it banks off this side rail. And you can also shoot the 12 ball and kind of do the same thing. Now, I would probably suggest improving the position of the 12 ball. We could potentially bank it all the way up here into this corner pocket, or maybe at least block the pocket from the 7 ball. The main reason why I don't suggest disturbing the 13 and the 10 ball is because the 13 ball has the possibility of going into this lower left corner pocket. So there's no reason to move it and potentially put it in a worse position than it starts. Well, look at that. It looks like we could have made the 10 ball. Now, what you're doing here is something I see a lot of beginning pool players do. What I suggest is that when you're going to shoot, don't leave the table until all of the balls in motion come to a stop. Because essentially what we had here is that the 13-10 bank combo into the upper right corner pocket was a possibility. But are you remembering that since you're walking away from the table? So what I'm suggesting is that when you miss, you need to try to quickly study why you missed and see if there was another possible shot that you could have done. Because chances are a shot like this is going to come up again sometime in your pool career, and now you know that you could possibly bank the 10 off of the combination all the way up here into the upper right corner pocket. So even though you know that you miss a shot, don't just walk away from the table and just dismiss the shot. Always try to learn something from the shot. So at this point here, your opponent only has one more ball left on the table, but you have cue ball in hand. Now, before I offer any advice, I want to see what you're going to do with ball in hand. So it looks like you're setting up for a combination, and that's what you did. So what I'm going to suggest here is the same thing I tell all of my team members, is that when you have ball in hand, you want to be able to look for the hardest ball on the table to play position on. So given that the combination went, even though there's a 3-ball clutter there, I don't consider that area to be the hardest ball on the table. The 12 ball is still the hardest ball on the table, even though it looks like the position of the 12 ball has been improved because it's no longer frozen to the side rail. But being that the 7 ball is there, it makes it harder to get position on the 12 ball here to shoot the 12 ball into the corner pocket. So let's back up a little bit. Right about here. If we look at the lay of the table, it looks like the 11 ball goes into the corner pocket. So if we're successful at doing that, we could potentially break open the 9 and the 14 and don't even have to do the combination. The 9 ball would go somewhere over here while the 14 ball might stay here. So that means you can play the 9 ball in this corner and then the 14 in this corner. But that doesn't mean shoot the 11 ball now. What I'm certainly suggesting is go ahead and take the 12 ball out. If we shoot the 12 ball into the corner pocket, the cue ball doesn't really go anywhere. It pretty much just stops right here. And then you play the 11 ball into the corner, potentially breaking up the 9 and the 14, and then potentially running the rest of the table because the table is now wide open for you to do and possibly get to the 8 ball. Now, I'm not going to take away that you made a good combination, and it looks like you have another combination that you're going to do right after that. So let's keep on watching after you do this first combination and see what happens. So we play the 9-14 combination. Oh, nice to see that you're ambidextrous. You can shoot both with your right and left hand. That right there, that looked like a potential double hit. I'd be very careful considering that the 9 ball is so close to your cue ball. I'm only judging by the reaction of the cue ball. It looks like it took off rather suddenly going forward as if you hit the cue ball twice. See what I mean? I don't necessarily expect the cue ball to react the way it did. But since nobody was watching and your opponent wasn't watching, it's not considered a foul since it goes to the shooter's call. But if you're not aware of it, that's where usually some arguments can actually occur. If someone was watching and they were to call a foul, but since there wasn't a third person watching, which is normally what's supposed to happen, to call whether it was a good hit or a bad hit. But for you to be more aware of the possibilities of you doing a double hit serves to your benefit. Because if you feel like you're going to do a double hit and you know that your opponent is not calling someone to come watch, be nice and call someone for your opponent just so that we can play fairly. Now it's still going to be your turn, so let's see what you're going to do. Are you going to shoot the 9 ball next? Okay, good. You immediately hone in on the 10 ball, which I probably would have told you to shoot the 10 ball. Because then that's when we're done. Now that was a good run that you did there. But I think at that point it was okay to take out the 10 ball, then potentially take out the 13 ball, which should give us position for the 12 ball like you have now. My only issue is that you left your trouble ball to be the last shot. And then going from the 12 to the 8 from this position is difficult because we're using just a center ball hit. Rather than if you would have taken it out earlier as your first shot being ball in hand, we could have potentially ended up with a completely different result. Now, of course, if you would have ran the table, then my argument doesn't even stand. But hopefully you can agree that the suggested route that I'm giving is easier than the route that you did take here. Now it's starting to look like we're going to lose this rack unless we do something here. With your opponent only having the 7 ball right there next to the corner pocket and also being very close to the 8 ball, what are we going to do in this position? It looks like you can cut the 10 ball into the corner pocket, and your cue ball is probably going to do something like this, or you could potentially scratch if you're not careful. I can't really tell what you can still do with the 12 ball from this angle. I'm not entirely sure if it's far enough in front of the side pocket that you don't risk scratching. So if the 10 ball doesn't seem to be a comfortable shot for you, then the only thing I see left is a safety. And that's by banking the 13 ball on your right side so that the 13 ball goes like this and your cue ball goes like this and hopefully lands behind your 12 ball so that way your opponent doesn't have a shot on the 7 ball. So it looks like you're going to want to try the 10 ball. Good shot. Now what do we do? The safety is still there. Hmm. But what exactly are you trying to do with that? What was your intention? The only thing I saw left there was to do the same exact safety that I mentioned before. Because when I looked ahead in the match, your opponent did finish the table, and then we'll be moving on to the next rack. So here we are in the second rack, and I just realized that I must have said the word potentially a lot during the first rack. I'm probably going to put up a counter to count how many times I said it and keep track of it for the remainder of the video, even though I'm going to try to not use it for the rest of the video. Now, here with the second rack, your opponent broke and the cue ball flew off the table, which is equivalent to a scratch. You now have cue ball in hand behind the head string, and you can only shoot at balls that are above the head string, which eliminates the 2 and the 4. So, with cue ball in hand, we have to decide with an open table which set is the best. And immediately it looks like stripes is the best. Even though you have cue ball in hand behind the head string, no solid presents themselves to be shot at. Now, having said that, with stripes, where are the trouble balls? Hopefully you can agree it's the 11 and the 14 ball stuck here in this clutter. So what you want to do is try to deal with them as soon as possible, even though with ball in hand, we can't, not from behind the head string. So here's what I suggest. Let's place the cue ball right here so that way we can bridge through the 2 and the 4 ball and shoot the 10 ball into the corner pocket. This should allow your cue ball to roll forward and get position on the 14 ball that looks like it could be shot here into the corner pocket. This would allow the possibility of breaking open the 1 from the 11, and then you have no more trouble balls left on the table until you get to the 8 ball. So with that being said, let's see how you decide to deal with this. So it looks like you're thinking about the 9 ball first. Nope, we changed our mind. We're going to be shooting the 10. So one thing I have to comment about is your arm. Under normal circumstances, we would want our elbow to be right above our hand. And since you're cueing like this, I can only think that you must have placed the cue ball in such a way that you're bridging over the 2 ball. And with ball in hand, why purposely put yourself in an uncomfortable situation? So I'm definitely suggesting that you should have moved the cue ball over to where you can shoot between the 2 and the 4, and then try to maintain this good form of having your elbow directly above your hand. Now, how do you execute this shot? That looked very controlled, and you made the ball. So that's awesome. It looks like you have position on the 14 ball, but it also looks like if you shoot this shot, your cue ball is going to go this way instead, which could be good because you're at least going to break open the 6 and the 8 ball. That only leaves the 11 ball. I mean, hopefully it goes here into the corner pocket, and if that's true, then after you break out the 8, there's no more issue. We could be able to run the entire table. But what's your next shot going to be? The 9 ball? Okay. Well, then what are you going to do with the 11 and the 14? You could possibly break it open here after the 13 ball because it looks like that you're going to shoot the 13 ball. Ugh. Did we tie up the 11? No, it doesn't look like it. You're going to shoot at it. Cool. The only thing I would have suggested there is that you should have hit the ball a little bit harder because now you have to kick at your 14 ball, which you make a good hit, but you don't hit a rail. So therefore, your opponent has cue ball in hand. So with your first shot of this rack, that was a really good run. So hopefully with the suggestion that I gave you there, you could see other alternatives that you could have done that I think might have been just a little bit easier than what you decided to do. Now here at this point, your opponent did clear a couple of balls off the table and then left you with this. And the only shot it looks like you have is the shot that you're looking at, the 15 ball. But now we definitely have to start thinking about what are we going to do next. You're so close to the rail that you're automatically going to be putting topspin on the cue ball, which means your cue ball is going to roll forward. This does look like you might be a little straight, so we can expect your cue ball to start rolling this way and possibly land here or here, depending upon how soft or hard you hit the ball. So clearly you could scratch. The question would be is if you're going to get position on the 12 ball, how do you plan on getting position on the 14 ball? Or is it possible using just center cue ball hits, except for this case we are using topspin? I'm not entirely sure because even if you land at the farthest point, let's say down here, you can shoot the 12 ball into the side pocket and allow the cue ball to roll forward. And if you try to cut the 14 ball into this pocket, your cue ball is automatically going to go off this way. And if you graze that 1 ball, you're more than likely going to scratch. So at this point, it looks like all you have is a 2 ball run, and then you might just want to separate the 14 from the 1 ball. Is that what you decide to do? Now, I wouldn't be elevating your cue so much. There's no reason to do that. You want to try to keep your cue as leveled as possible, but you still made a great shot. And you can see here that if you shoot the 12 in the side, your cue ball goes further away from your 14 ball. But that's all that you really have. Now, unfortunately, you missed the shot, and now here we are back at the table after your opponent missed. And it looks like we're going to be shooting the 14 again, but we missed. And then we have another opportunity. The 12 ball does go in the side pocket. We could potentially win the game from here. Great shot there. If we can make the 12 in the side, we should have a shot at the 8 ball in the upper left corner pocket. Oh, that's unfortunate. Okay, I'm not sure what we're going to do here. If we can see the 12 to go into the side pocket, what do we do with the 8 ball? Oh, what happened there? Let's go back and look. Ah, you touched the cue ball, so your opponent had ball in hand. But fortunately, your opponent didn't run the table, and this is what you have here. The 12 ball should easily go into the side pocket, automatically giving you position on the 8 ball for the upper right corner pocket. Awesome. You're now on the board. Now here we are with you breaking in the 3rd rack, so let's see if you stand up again. And you do. And it doesn't look like you make a ball on the break. And at this point, your opponent chose solids, making you stripes again. And it looks like you're going to shoot the 10 ball in the side pocket, which I can tell you is not the shot that you should be taking. With you being stripes, you have this clutter right here, the 11 and the 14 ball, just like how you had it in the previous rack. But you have the opportunity to deal with it right now by shooting the 15 ball into the corner pocket and driving your cue ball into that clutter, hopefully separating all three of those balls, and then therefore your 11 ball and your 14 ball should be able to be shot into a pocket somewhere. So when you shoot the 10 ball, what are you going to do next? You could shoot the 15 ball next as long as your cue ball doesn't get away from you, but let's find out. Good shot there. Did you see how your cue leaves your bridge hand? This is what I'm talking about. This is a common thing that happens when you shoot with an open hand bridge as you lift your cue off of your hand. Now, it did look like you did that very much afterwards, after you hit the cue ball. But still, stay down, leave your cue in your bridge hand if you can, and then stand up from the shot and watch the remainder of the shot. Now, at this point here, you can still shoot the 15 ball and break out the 11 and 14. Is that what you decide to do? It doesn't look like it. You're going for the 9 ball. And at this point, we're starting to lose the opportunity to even break the 11 and 14 ball out. You're going to shoot the 15 ball, and that's where your run ends. So, hopefully with what I've shown you there is slow down, study the entire table, and don't always go for the obvious shot. In this case, the obvious shot being the 10 ball was not the best ball that you should have started your run with. You should have tried to deal with your trouble spot being the 11 ball and the 14 ball by shooting the 15 ball into the corner pocket and trying to drive the cue ball into that clutter. So here we are back at the table, and it looks like you're going to shoot the 13 ball into the lower right corner pocket. And I'm okay with that. You also have the chance of shooting the 15 ball, but since you shot it on your last shot and missed, it disturbed the clutter that you have here. And now it looks like you can do a 3-ball combination. You can hit the 14 ball to hit the 1 ball on its right side and possibly back cut the 11 ball into the corner pocket. Heck, you can even shoot it now if you wanted to. The only reason why I like you shooting it after the 13 ball is I expect your cue ball to come somewhere over here. And if that's true, when you try to cut the 14 ball on the right side of the 1 ball, I expect your cue ball to do something like this. And if that's successful, as long as the 14 ball and or the 1 ball don't get in the way, you could shoot the 15 ball into the corner pocket. And if they do get in the way, you have the option of shooting the 12 into the side pocket. So, is that what we try to do after we shoot the 13 ball? Good shot there. We're set up for the combination like I talked about. Ah, good try. Now, did you see how the 11 ball hit the outside of the pocket and then continued to bobble its way out? So that tells me that you didn't cut the 14 ball far enough on its left side, and you can see here that you're driving the 14 ball straight into the 1 ball. So that means we're cutting the 11 ball on its right side, forcing it to go off to the left. Had you cut the 14 ball farther on the left side, we could have tried to get the 14 ball on the right side of the 1 ball in order to back cut the 11 ball and then possibly end up in the position that I spoke of. Now at this point, your opponent was able to get 1 more ball off the table before they missed, and you're left with this. Now your last 4 remaining balls are at least wide out in the open, so we don't really have an issue there. The only issue we have is, what are we going to do with the 8 ball? It doesn't have a direct path or an easy direct path to any pocket. You could bank the 8 ball into the cross side pocket, or you can bank the 8 ball into the corner pocket. I'm just not sure if the 3 ball is in the way of that bank shot. But none of that matters until we get there. The real question becomes, with these last 4 remaining balls, what's the first ball that you're going to shoot at? It looks like it's the 14 ball. Why not the 11 ball? So you overcut the 14 ball. And even if you were successful, look where your cue ball ends up. It'll end up in a slightly different position if you would have made it, but it would have been further away from your last 3 remaining balls. Now, if we back up and look at this, if you were to shoot the 11 ball, I expect your cue ball to do something like this. And if I'm right, you could shoot the 14 ball next, or you could shoot the 15 ball, or you could shoot the 12 ball. The point is, the cue ball would be much closer to your last three remaining balls rather than further away. That's why I think this would have been the better option to shoot. Now, your opponent wasn't able to make a shot on their turn, and here we are again, and you're going to shoot the 14 ball again, but this time into the side pocket. And I don't think that's the best shot for the same exact reason as the previous shot. If you're successful at making this ball, I expect your cue ball to come further away from your last three remaining balls. Now, if you were to shoot the 12 ball or the 15 ball into this corner pocket, either of those shots allow the cue ball to stay at the upper half of the table, and you would be much closer to any of the last three remaining balls rather than being further away. So when you shoot this 14 ball, watch what I mean. See, it's a good shot, but look where your cue ball ends up. So what are you going to shoot at next? It looks like the 15 ball. And regardless of which ball you shoot at, I certainly wouldn't want you to elevate your cue like you're doing, because this is what your arm looks like when you start to elevate your cue rather than having your elbow above your hand like I spoke of earlier. Because here, since you're striking down on the cue ball, which was the same from the previous shot, if you're not careful and you strike the cue ball slightly off center to the left or the right, your cue ball is not going to go in a straight line. It's going to curve in the direction of the side of which you hit the cue ball. So if you hit to the left of center, your cue ball is going to curve to the left. And if you hit to the right of center, your cue ball is going to curve to the right. I would rather you still try to keep your cue as leveled as possible so that your elbow is directly above your hand. But since you're so close to this rail, you're automatically going to be putting topspin. So you don't want to be too leveled with the cue ball because you don't want your cue to just skip over the top of the cue ball and miscue. Now, when you shoot this, what's going to happen? Now, you did shoot the 15 ball. So ask yourself, were you able to see that the cue ball traveled straight, or did it curve either to the left or to the right, depending upon what side you actually struck the cue ball on? Now, at this point, your opponent was able to make one more ball and then gave you ball in hand. And it looks like you're going to set up for the 12 ball to go into the side pocket. But I'm not entirely sure that that's the best shot, all because of still, what are you going to do with the 8 ball? In other words, what is the last ball that you're going to make that allows you to have position to do something with the 8 ball? Especially if you're going to bank the 8 ball into the cross side pocket or bank the 8 ball into the corner pocket. Now, because of the lay of the table, here's one potential route I can give you that allows you to bank the 8 ball into the cross side pocket. I would place my cue ball here and play the 15 ball into the side pocket so that way we can allow the cue ball to roll forward and hopefully land right about here to shoot the 12 into this corner pocket and still allow the cue ball to roll forward and have a very little angle on the 11 ball. Because if we just gently shoot the 11 ball into the corner pocket and we get our cue ball to stop somewhere right around here, now we can try to bank the 8 ball into the cross side pocket and win the game. Now, when you shoot this 12 ball into the side pocket, what are you going to do next? Let's find out. Okay, it looks like it has to be the 11 ball. Ha, looks like you can barely reach it, so you switch hands. You're probably going to hit this ball too hard, though, since this is your offhand. It looks like you did. Unless the 15 ball does pass by the 3 ball to go into the corner pocket, but then still, what are you going to do with the 8 ball? Whoops. Doesn't look like we hit the ball hard enough, and now your opponent has cue ball in hand. Now, lucky enough, even though your opponent had cue ball in hand, it doesn't look like they were able to finish the table, and here you are with this shot. So now, can we make the 15 ball into this corner pocket and allow our cue ball to come over here so we can shoot the 8 ball in this corner pocket? That looks like to be your only option. And that's what you're aiming for. So let's see how this works out. Oh, good try. But you're still lucky because your opponent doesn't make the ball and you're left with this, which you severely overcut the 15 ball. Your opponent tries to bank the 8 ball into the cross corner pocket and almost made it. But then here is where you actually get a timeout, and one of your teammates comes in and tries to coach you to do a safety, which was, in my opinion, the correct shot to do. They try to tell you to hit the 15 ball in such a way to where it banks off this rail, which means your cue ball goes off this way and then hopefully just lands right behind it, forcing your opponent to kick at the 8 ball. Now, as we move forward, the problem was that you cut the 15 ball too thin and you hit the 15 ball too hard. So let's fast forward a little bit and get to the shot. Right about here. So you can see how thin you cut the ball and how hard you hit the ball. So you needed a thicker hit to get the safety, I think, that your teammate was trying to get you to do. Now, what you're really fortunate about when I looked ahead, your opponent made the 8 ball in the lower right corner pocket, but then scratched in the upper right corner pocket, allowing you to be on the hill with 2 points. So here we are in the 4th rack, and it looks like you've moved your cue ball further away from the center, so you're no longer doing as much of a head-on break as before. So with you also using a open hand bridge rather than a rail bridge, I'm curious what you're going to do here. Will you be standing up during your break like you did before, or will you be picking up your cue, or both? Well, you stayed down during your break, which is an improvement, but you still picked up your cue off of your bridge hand. So did you do that before, during, or after contacting the cue ball? And regardless of which one the answer was, let's just try to eliminate it altogether. The easiest way to do that, in my opinion, is to break with the closed hand bridge. Because the only way the cue can leave your bridge hand is if you open your bridge hand and let go of the cue, which you don't want to do here. Let's make sure that we're driving our cue straight through the cue ball and not lose control of the cue or lose control of the cue ball. Now, did you make a ball on the break? Doesn't look like it. So at this point, you're solids. It looks like your opponent claimed stripes this time. And so when we look at the table, it looks like our only trouble area is this right here, the 3 and the 4. It does look like you can do a 3-4 combination. The 2 ball at least goes in by itself, and if you do shoot the 2 ball from the correct angle, say like right here, then you can break out the 3 and the 4. So it all depends. If you could get somewhere over here, then you could do the 3-4 combination, but let's see how all of this develops because it looks like you're going to shoot the 1 ball in the side pocket. So, do you shoot this soft enough to where the cue ball doesn't really move very far and you can play the 2 ball and then break out the 3 and the 4, or does it roll too far and you might have to shoot the 6 and the 7 next? Well, looks like it rolled a little too far, and you're probably going to have to play the 7 ball next. You do that, and look how you picked up your cue off of your bridge hand. So that's the bad habit that I really want you to get rid of. That right there. Look at this. Your cue should still be in your hand and look like this. And then you entirely stand up from the table and then watch the remainder of the shot. Now at this point, your opponent only made 1 ball before they missed and then left you this. You still have this 2-3-4 clutter. The 2 ball does go by itself, which allows you to break open the 3 and the 4. But then you also have this option, which I think is also a good option. You could shoot the 7 ball down here in the lower left corner pocket. Because from your viewpoint, you'll be cutting the 7 ball to your right, which means your cue ball will go off into the left and you could land in the window between the 15 and the 14 and take the 3-4 combination. Which one do you choose? Looks like it's going to be the 2 ball. Ah, look how much you pick up your cue off of your bridge hand. Now you ended up overcutting the 2 ball, which has nothing to do with you picking up your cue off of your bridge hand. You just overcut the ball. I address again that picking up your cue off of your hand is just a bad habit that I think you need to remove from your game for the sake of making sure that we're hitting the cue ball where we want to hit the cue ball. So, what happens afterwards? Now, it looks like almost every ball on the table is good except for the 5 ball. So, here we are again after your opponent misses. Looks like all you have is the 7 ball, and that's what you're aiming at. Ah, but you get lucky and pocket the 4 ball in the upper left corner pocket. But then you're sizing up for the 7-2 combination. So, did you see your 5 ball here? You're now in a position where you can play it. So, I definitely suggest that you should play it so that way it doesn't present to be a problem later on. Now, I understand that you're going to be opening up the 8 ball, but at this point in time, we're trying to win the game. And so, since this is a trouble spot, let's get rid of it. Now, you decide to shoot the 7-2. So, what happens afterwards? Good shot there. Are you going to shoot the 7 ball? You could improve the position of the 5 ball if you want to leave the 7 ball there as a blocker. You could just shoot the 5 ball up here so that way you know it has a pocket later on. You can even do the same thing with the 6 ball, improve the position of the 6 ball. What are you going to decide to do? You're going to go for the 7. Whoops! You contacted the 9 ball first, so now your opponent has cue ball in hand. Now with ball in hand, your opponent almost ran the table. They missed their last ball and then left you this, which you still have to deal with this 5 ball being here. Now because of the lay of the table, shooting the 6 ball like you're lined up to do is the best shot to take. I expect the cue ball to do something like this. I'm going to come over here and hit this side rail and then start heading up towards the upper half of the table, which is what you're going to want. You either want to end up with a shot on the 3 ball or land in a position where you can possibly bank the 5 ball into the cross side pocket, therefore opening up your 8 ball if you're able to finish the table and win the game. Now, you might be opening up the 8 ball for your opponent if you don't finish the table, but at this point, we're on the hill. Let's try to win the game. So we don't have a shot on the 3 ball, so we do have the shot on the 5 ball to bank into the cross side pocket. But it looks like we hit it too soft. Now, fortunately, when I looked ahead, your opponent did not win the game. They made their last ball, and then they bobbled the 8 ball in the upper left-hand corner pocket and left you this. And when I looked ahead, you ended up winning the game. You shot your 5 ball into the side pocket and allowed your cue ball to just roll down here. Now, at some point in time, as you get better and better, what you want to try to start to learn is how can you hit this cue ball in such a way to where you can get the cue ball to hit this rail, and then start heading towards the 3 ball, making the 3 ball shot easier than what you're going to end up with. See, you make the shot and it's a great shot, but because you have all this distance, this is a difficult shot or a more difficult shot than what it could have been. But since you were successful at making the 3 ball, you have an easy shot on the 8 ball. I think you walk off screen to go get a marker to mark the pocket, but I think your opponent says it's okay for you to call it. So when you line up for this shot, you play it off of the short rail just so you avoid the scratch. And you're able to win the match 3-1. Okay, so for my closing remarks, I thought you played a fantastic game as a skill level 4. Now, just like I tell my team members that even though you won your match, that doesn't mean you stop learning. You always have room to improve your game. And with you being a skill level 4, I would hope that you have the ambitions of becoming a 5, as well as continue to climb the ladder until you eventually reach the skill level of 7. So I'm hoping that with the information that I was able to give during the course of this match, you can apply to your future matches as you get better and better at this game. Now, for all you viewers out there, let me remind you that if you see other options that Mikey could have done during the course of his match, feel free to comment in the comment section below with the timestamp of the shot and the option that you think that he could have taken. And as always, if you like what you saw, give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Take care, everybody.